Hello everyone. I'm very excited to be recording this video today because I'm going to make an announcement for the launch of a new course. Before we discuss about the course, first let us rewind and go back to the year 2022. I remember this was the year where I truly understood the power and scope of generative AI. And the main reason was that applications like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion came out, which could generate images which were very, very realistic. And I remember being completely blown away by the realism of the images which these AI applications could generate. And that was the time where I really started taking AI generation and generative AI overall as a field very seriously. I remember initially I did not focus on the technology behind mid-journey or stable diffusion, but I was so excited to try this out that I took this to a lot of schools in India, and I started showing teachers what you can do with applications like mid-journey. We had a fun exercise where I used to tell the teachers that tell me a name of an animal, a place, and an activity, and let's generate an image using Midjourney. So we used to come up with crazy prompts like monkeys playing cricket on Mars, etc. And I still remember the smile it had on teachers' faces. It was really great to see. Uh, when I started using these models, the word diffusion really caught my attention. I used to wonder, is this related to the diffusion which I know about? I know about diffusion where, let's say, I spray a perfume in one corner of the room. The smell slowly percolates in the room and reaches to the other corner of the room. So, this process of percolation and slow movement of particles from one area to another, that's diffusion. And I always wondered at the back of my mind, where does the word diffusion in stable diffusion come from? So recently in this year, I started studying more about it, and I realized that there is a beautiful story behind the development of mid-journey and stable diffusion. And the word diffusion actually is used in the same sense like we use in physics. This development and journey and the research which has happened to develop these diffusion models have lasted for 10 to 15 years, and every development has used breakthroughs made by a previous researcher. So it has been truly an incremental journey. But why I was hooked onto this field more was that, firstly, it was a field where I could see mathematics being influenced by physics. So we are actually looking at the physical diffusion process, and then uh, using the intuition from that process to develop an AI technique, which I found to be amazing. And the literature reveals that there are three different tracks which kind of merged together in the year 2022, and that's when we get these brilliant models. So I wanted to understand what these three different tracks are, and can we understand them from the fundamentals. So this series has been made from that point of view. I want to explain diffusion models to you completely from scratch. And I'm giving the title to this series as The Principles of Diffusion Models from Origins to Advances. And we are going to go from complete basics and we are going to understand how it has evolved over 10, 15 years and why we are able to create such realistic images now, how are mathematics and physics so beautifully combined and how they work well with each other. Diffusion models are not just limited to images. You can create beautiful videos, audios, protein synthesis. There are so many application of diffusion models that this whole field is very fascinating. Now let me quickly show you how exactly I have structured this course and how I plan to teach it. It will be very similar to Vijwara's other teaching material, and I'll be teaching these series of lectures, and it will be uploaded on YouTube completely for free. Now, let's dive in and understand the curriculum in detail. Thank you. Let us try to understand how this course is going to be structured. The title of this course is The Principles of Diffusion Models from Origins to Advances. As I said before in the introduction, diffusion models has really revolutionized the text to image synthesis as they produce images which are very realistic, and some examples we see are DALI 3 and Stable Diffusion. And apart from these applications, which also include Midjourney, there are also other domains where diffusion models find a lot of applications. The next domain that we are going to discuss is that of protein structure prediction. This has been a problem which has fascinated biologists for a very long time. And it turns out that now you can use diffusion models to generate 3D molecular structures and protein conformations. And there are some excellent models which have been released in the last 2 3 years, which have diffusion models at the heart of the methodology for predicting these protein structures. And I find this application very fascinating. Another application, which is kind of a direct synthesis or extension of image generation capabilities, is the ability to generate videos using AI. Video generation models are still improving, but we are now seeing increasingly models becoming more effective at generating realistic videos. It started from generating 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and now we can generate up to 5-minute videos using generative AI. And a lot of these models, like Lumiere by Google Research, have diffusion process at the heart of how these models are prepared in the first place. Another very key application which I really want to highlight is that of modern robot learning. All of us have always been mesmerized by the possibilities of robotics. You see all these Boston Dynamics robots flying around doing these acrobatic stunts, but the question is that why haven't we seen a lot of these robots in our houses doing household chores? And there has been a lot of focus in the AI community to advance the field of robotics, and diffusion has given a huge push to this advancement. Recently, we are seeing a lot of foundational robotics models being released, which are trained on massive amounts of robotics trajectories, similar to how a LLM is trained on massive amounts of web data. Similarly, a robotics foundation model is trained on massive amounts of robotics trajectories. And then you have these foundational models which can do a lot of tasks like folding clothes, pushing a block, pick and place operations, etc. A fascinating example of this is the model Pi Zero, which is developed by Physical Intelligence. And they use diffusion models at the heart of their policy. And this is fascinating, right? Because the process of diffusion, which appears to be limited to physics, somehow seems to have applications in a lot of these different domains. That leads us to wonder, is there something intrinsic which is happening in diffusion that is common in all these applications? But robotics is a field which has fascinated me for quite some time, and diffusion models have advanced the field of robot policy learning significantly. Uh, I will be following the progress of physical intelligence very closely. I am very impressed by the work done by their team, and this model, which appears to be a frontier model in the class of robotics foundation model, is very interesting, and the architecture, the development process is also very fascinating. Another application of diffusion models is to generate realistic music and speech, maintaining the temporal coherence and style. So you can imagine diffusion models taking care of not just images and videos, but also audio synthesis. Now that we have established that diffusion models have a huge number of applications and they have a lot of potential, they have already revolutionized few industries, and they might have a lot of other applications waiting to be uncovered. This is a field which has a lot of potential, not just from the research side, but also application side. So anyone who is looking to understand AI from a more deeper lens and develop a skill set to build AI applications should definitely have a very clear cut fundamental understanding of diffusion models in their arsenal. However, very little is known about how they work. Let's do a small study. What we'll do is we will go to YouTube and we'll try to understand what kind of videos are available on diffusion models. So let's see, diffusion models explained. So you see, there are these small videos, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 12 minutes, and some of them have got really good views. But all of these videos are very surface level. They don't really help you understand what is happening underneath. You get a sense that, okay, fine, I have understood diffusion, but really you don't. And my level of understanding was this 2 years back. I broadly understood what was happening, but then I realized that there is a whole mystery waiting to be discovered. It's like this is just covering the tip of the iceberg, whereas the iceberg is very huge. And the rich mystery and the rich fundamentals are not presented anywhere. All of these videos are 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maximum 30 minutes long. So, very little is known about how they work. And I think that diffusion models should be very fundamental in every AI course. There should be a separate course just reserved for diffusion models. So, this course is designed for people who seek a very clear, conceptual, and mathematically grounded understanding of diffusion models. It clarifies the theoretical foundations, explaining the reasoning behind their diverse formulations, and provides a stable footing for further study and research in this rapidly evolving field. And this is a very great or accessible entry point for learners. We'll also make this course very practical. We will include a lot of practical applications and practical examples, which will make every single concept very clear. So we'll have a very nice balance of theory and practicals. Now, the reason I'm coming out with this course right now is because I received a major boost when this book was released, The Principles of Diffusion Models from Origins to Advances. And the writers of these books are some of the authors which have themselves contributed to some key advances in the development of diffusion models. And it's a fabulously written book. It's kind of long, it's around 500 pages. My aim is to take this book as the primary source of reference and add my own thinking, practical applications, and relate it to some real life examples wherever necessary. For example, related to the field of robotics, then image generation, and take real life examples so that the theory doesn't become very complicated. And one thing I realized after reading this book, and these thoughts were also circling in my mind, is that uh, anyone who is learning artificial intelligence and wants to go a little bit deep, you need to start looking at the subject from multiple different lenses. Looking at diffusion models from a surface level understanding is okay, but if you go one level deeper, you start to understand that there is something very deep which is happening, which is really connecting everything together. And that is what we are going to understand. So at the heart of this is something very simple, but to uncover that simple fact, we are going to go through a lot of material. So let's try to briefly understand how I have divided the curriculum according to this book. And I will not go very theoretical in this section. So it might appear that I'm skimming some of the details, but it's very deliberate. It's to not burden you with a lot of keywords right now. But at the same time, for people looking to know whether this course is relevant for them, I want to give a very broad level understanding of what all concepts I am planning to cover as a part of this course, and how is the course really structured. So, part A of the course is going to be Introduction to Deep Generative Modeling. What are the fundamentals? What is the meaning of deep generative models? What is generative models itself in the first place, and what is the broader objective we are trying to achieve here? This is going to be very fundamental. And it turns out that what we are trying to do is we are trying to generate an image, but the way we do that is we try to look at what would be the distribution which is used to generate all these images. We predict the distribution and then we sample from the distribution to predict a new image. So I will explain all of this once we start the course, but that's in a broad sense, this is what we are trying to do. And the field of deep generative modeling has evolved quite a lot in the last 10 years. As you can see, one of the first methods actually came 40 years back, which was energy based methods. Since then, we have made a lot of progress: variation autoencoders, normalizing flows, diffusion probabilistic models, neural ODEs, noise conditional score network, denoising diffusion probabilistic models. This is very interesting. And then flow matching. All of these are different techniques which have given rise or expanded the breadth of this field of deep generative modeling. Now, how are we going to understand all these concepts? For example, pick variation autoencoders. What will be our strategy to understand these concepts? Let's try to understand that. So, in part B, we will actually touch upon the core perspectives on diffusion models, and this is why in this part we will cover all of these different techniques individually. So, broadly speaking, there are three views which I mentioned at the start of the video, which converge very nicely: the variational view, score based view, and flow based view. I don't want you to focus on these terminologies a lot, but for example, let's take an example of variational autoencoder. It falls within the variational view, and we will understand the variational autoencoder from the complete basics. How exactly is it formulated, the mathematics behind it, and then finally we will see a practical example of where it is implemented in practice. Then we'll move on to the next view, etc. So every single subsection of this course is going to be devoted to one view. First, we'll start with variational view, then we will cover score based view, then we will cover flow based view, and then after that, we will see how these views are coming together. For example, if you see this robotics application which I mentioned, Pi Zero is built on a policy which uses this flow based view. And if you look at Midjourney is built on a policy which uses variational view. So variational view and flow based view are very common, but everything started from score based view. So we need to look at that as well so that we get a very complete picture of how the different perspectives on diffusion models are and how they work together with each other. So this is how we are going to understand each lecture. And then finally, in part three, we are going to understand how to sample from these diffusion models, how to steer the generation using classifier guidance, classifier free guidance, etc. We are going to look at a lot of practical examples, as you can see in this figure. This is an example where Chinese letters are generated using the process of diffusion, and it's very exciting, right? You can see that when the green bar is almost zero, it's complete noise, but we are generating something from noise. So initially you start with noise, and then slowly you start the process of denoising, and then finally you get what you want. So there is a feeling of some magic happening here, and that is what actually attracted me to this field. I wanted to study it in more depth. People who have taken Visuara's courses before know our style of teaching is completely from the basics. We do not assume any prior knowledge, and we try to impart the intuition to you, which is going to be crucial for you to develop a very deep understanding and uh, enjoyment of the subject. Because we believe that if you start enjoying the subject of AI, the sky is the limit for you. Then you can take it up ahead in a lot of different ways. A bit about your course instructor. I have taught multiple courses before, including reasoning LLMs from scratch and hands on reinforcement learning. The reinforcement learning course just finished a while back, and after that, I have come up with this diffusion series. Both these courses have received very good traction, and every single day, I see people either commenting or reaching out to us personally regarding how this course has helped them. So, this is how we are going to teach you this course also in the same manner. And my teaching style is very simple. I focus on three things. First is the fundamentals, and then assume no prior knowledge and mix theory and practical. Why the fundamentals are important is because you can look at these YouTube videos and you can understand broad level what's happening, but you know when you have understood something from the very basics, and that feeling you will not get by looking at these concepts from a very surface level. To get that, you need to understand the mathematics and the physics behind these concepts. As I explained in the introduction, the many of the concepts are actually inspired from physics, which is also very interesting. So this is how we are planning to conduct this course, and I'm very excited to teach this course to all of you. I'm planning to release every lecture either once in a week or once in 2 weeks. Thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in this course.